Ride till I can't no more.
I got the horses in the back, horse stock is attached, head is matted black.
Hi everyone, this is Alan from Alan's Ancient Archaeology. I'm here in Macedonia and I'm going to give you an introduction to 51 archaeological sites in Macedonia. There'll be other videos with specific views of the sites themselves, but this is an overview so you can get an idea of the rich heritage which there is in Macedonia. Some of these sites are UNESCO protected, so this is a list of the 51 sites. We've got Tumba Madlan in Skopje. We've got Skopje Fortress. This is the Turkish fortress which overlooks the city. There's Skopje, which is an ancient town, Roman town within Skopje, and we'll show you a separate video of that one. Torresium is a Greco-Roman settlement not far from Skopje, about 20 kilometers south east of Skopje. Kasiol above the river Pilna. Skopje is a big Roman city dating from the 1st to the 6th century AD, and we've got an extensive video of that one. There are some very interesting mosaics there. Verbanska Kulchuka Stubera is another interesting site, a small site quite far from Skopje, near the border with Greece. Markovi Kuli, Marcus's Tower. This is an ancient fortress in one of the regions of Macedonia. Heraclea Lydsenia is the ancient Roman city of Heraclea. That's a beautiful site of a Roman settlement, and there's another small settlement nearby which isn't mentioned here, but we'll tell you about that as well. Golemgrad, Likinidos, Engelena, Bay of the Bones. These are all in different regions of Macedonia. There's Vardarski Rid, the town at Izar, 15 holy martyrs of Tiberopolis, the antique baths. This is at Banska, which is not far from the border with Greece. It's near a town called Strumlitsa. Kamvekuli, Isa, Bargala. Barga is another Roman settlement, quite a large town, which we'll show you a video of separately. Marodvis is another Roman church and villa, which we'll show you in a separate video. Minichko Kale, Grad, Galamo Bradice, Kokino. Kokino is a very interesting ancient observatory which is located in the mountains not far from Kumanova, 20 kilometers north of Kumanova. Kastapeska Karpa, Telebusi Kale, Beltepe. These are some of the sites, and you probably find there are other sites in Macedonia as well, but it's got a very rich heritage, and wherever you look in Macedonia, you can, if you look hard, find these sites. The reason I say that is because some of the sites, even though they're quite valuable and quite well preserved, are not guarded, and they're not secure. So if we take as an example the Roman aqueduct in Skopje, it's not labelled prominently as a tourist attraction. It's not shown on the maps, but if you can find this place, which I have, and which we'll show you a video of, you'll find it's a very well preserved example of a Roman aqueduct. So just generally within Macedonia, since the times of cave lions and Paleolithic hunters, remains have been discovered that give meaning to the distant and misty beginnings of the existence of mankind on the soil of the ever-promised land in the region of the mythical Balkans. The remains from life in this period have been recorded in the valley of the river Babuna, that is in the Makarov cave near Kristiforova in Pelagonia. Even earlier traces of life have been recognized at the Paleolithic accesses on Mount Ozagova. Their story reminds one of the Argonaut-like journey through time from the Pleistocene distance. From this old Stone Age onwards, everything changed. In fact, these regions are obviously strongly attracted in the period that followed in prehistoric times to the new Iron Age, to the so-called Neolithic Revolution, i.e. to the idyllic period of the Neolithic civilization which began approximately 8,000 years ago. The impressive terracotta idol figures of the Great Mother from Matsari and Govlevo, the figure of Adam of Govlevo, the numerous cultural achievements of the Amza Begovo Vishnik and the Volushko Porodin cultural groups testify to this fact. From these times onwards, the promised land of Macedonia, with its rivers and lakes, mountains and hills, valleys and dales, and mild climate, has been continually settled, and this vibrant life can still be felt today. Although it appears as if these ages, known as the Neolithic, Copper Age, Bronze Age and Iron Age, will never return, yet sometime deep in our future they will. The archaeological treasures, the rich ceramic ware, manufacture, bone, stone and the flint tools discovered in the shore waters of Lake Ohrid, that's the Bay of Bones which mentioned above, testify to this fact. These ages are flooded with the highly significant artifacts known as Macedonian bronzes, small ritual objects in a variety of shapes which promoted the Iron Age on Macedonian soil in the archaeological world. The journey through time continues to the gold ritual masks and numerous other gold, silver, bronze and ceramic artifacts that have been discovered as funeral gifts that accompanied the deceased from the aristocratic circles in their tombs in Lichnida, especially in Lichnidos and Trebinista, present-day Ohrid region, in the 6th and 5th centuries BC. These treasures include the famed volute craters which emerged in the region of the valley of the river Vardar in the promised land Dimir Kapia, while the famous figurine of the Maenad from the Tetavos also dates from this period. Early antiquity and the golden 4th century, when Macedonia ruled the world with its kings Philip II and Alexander III, left behind numerous archaeological artifacts and exceptional architectural structures, fortresses built of megalithic stone blocks, Lichnidos, Ohrid, Engelana near the church of St. Erasmus, across Pelagonial, and structures known in scholarly circles as the Macedonian type of tombs. That's in Ohrid, Pelagonial, while the Macedonian period in world history, with its promotion of the so-called Hellenistic culture, which is a sublimate of the Macedonian, Hellenic, Egyptian, Persian cultural, represents one of the richest periods on European soil. Macedonia of that time abounds in archaeological artifacts made of gold and silver, in riches open to the whole world as they knew it. However, it was in this period that the so-called Macedonian Schism began, and somewhat later, with the oncoming of Rome as the future world empire, the Promised Land became the first Roman province in the Balkans. In fact, this period marked the beginning of the so-called Macedonian partition. Macedonian soil was being given away to those to whom it was promised by history. In the Roman period, as the Roman values gradually took root in all spheres of life in the already urbanized areas, the cities in Macedonia developed in circumstances of provincial peace and well-being. This is evident from the excavations carried out in Skopje, Heraclea, Skopje, Sibera and Lichnidos. Skopje, which is situated at the heart of the Macedonia in this period, the mouth of two rivers, the Axios Vardar and the Erigon Chorna, is one of the most important cities which, in the Roman period, had exceptional privileges and minted its own money, as did Lichnidos as well, which was situated in the then Upper Macedonia. The fact that it stood on the shores of Lake Lichnidos, Lake Ohrid, and by the most famous antique main road via Egnatia, made it an exceptionally wealthy and sophisticated city of that time. Skopje, the Roman colonial city of the period between the 1st and 3rd centuries, was among the largest in the Balkans, while Stubira near Sepigovo, Prelep region, was at that time one of the larger antique centres with workshops for building marble sculptures. The region of the Promised Land was especially densely populated in late antiquity. This can be concluded on the basis of the presence of late antique grave structures made mainly of two-ridged roof tegulae. It was also the beginning of the early Christian period, i.e. the time of basilicas, monumental early Christian buildings with resplendent architecture features and mosaic floors. The basilicas in Lichnidos, Ohrid and Heraclea, with their depictions of cosmogony made with the magical multicolored pebbles on subjects from the Christian faith, are especially important for this period within the early Christian Mediterranean world. The well-known Terracotta Icons from Venetia, a collection absolutely rare in world religious art, also belong to this period. This is a period when Macedonia was promised by history to the Byzantine Empire. This is the time of Emperor Justinian, who, interestingly enough, is believed to have originated from a region in Macedonia. This is the time of the long Argonaut-like Byzantine journey across the high Balkan historical mountains, a time when, in the 10th and 11th centuries, 9 emperors from the so-called Macedonian dynasty sat on the imperial throne in Constantinople. Simultaneously, the Balkan regions were settled by Slavonic tribes, 6th to 7th centuries, of whose material culture very little remains. Nevertheless, the time of St. Clement, late 9th to early 10th centuries, is the golden period of the Slavonic peoples in the Promised Land. It is the time of the activity of St. Clement's University, and a time which subsequently resulted in the establishment of Samuel's medieval Slavonic Empire. Samuel's fortress in Ohrid is the profane monument which, evidently in archaeological and historical sense, reflects this period of the Macedonian Slavonic domination over other Balkan lands. The medieval cultural strata in the archaeological soil in Macedonia abound in testimonies to the achievements of the mighty Byzantine Spring, which includes jewellery, glazed painted ceramic ware, metal objects, and especially numerous individual and group finds of gold, silver and bronze coins unearthed on archaeological sites. With the exception of Tsar Samuel who is without doubt the only emperor in European and world history who did not mint coins, since he probably did not dismount his horse for 40 years and did not have time to organize the monetary system in his empire. Other rulers left their mark not only in this domain, but also within the entire socio-political and religious life of the populations of the empire. Finally, after a period of rule of Serbian kings in the 14th century, towards the end of this period, Macedonia was promised to the Ottoman Turks. In other words, it was part of the Ottoman Empire for more than half a millennium. Bearing in mind that the distance from the period is constantly growing, especially with the beginning of the 21st century, archaeological research should include the exploration and scholarly study of this period in a much more serious manner. This is especially important since it was part of the empire that Macedonia began its own battle, that is, it began to work in the direction of promising itself to itself in the true sense of this phrase. More than 4,700 archaeological sites have been identified in the archaeological soil of Macedonia. Only a few of them have been explored or are sites with undergoing excavations. Here we present 28 of them, which in a certain way reflect this country in its archaeological sense, a country which, regardless of the circumstances, represents an archaeological oasis both in Europe and as part of the Mediterranean cultural complex. This is an article by Pasco Kuzma. This is the first site at Tumba Matsari. The site of Tumba Matsari is located in the present-day suburb of Chinto, represents the most important Neolithic settlement in the Skopje Valley. It was discovered in 1961-2 during archaeological reconnaissance. The first archaeological explorations were carried out in 1978 by the Museum of Macedonia. The results revealed that this is a Neolithic settlement with 3 phases during which it was settled. The stratigraphy of the settlement has a cultural stratum 2.4 meters thick and the pits are 2.8 meters deep. This settlement reached its economic and cultural peak in the period between 5800 and 5200 BC, i.e. during the phase Anza-Begovo-Vucinic, 2nd to the 4th. The explorations carried out in 1981 revealed the first structure identified as a shrine. Thus far, 7 more such structures have been unearthed. The house that was discovered first was built in the traditional technique with poles stuck in the ground, often flanked with stones, millstones. The patching shows that big hewn logs whose imprints, traces are still visible, were built into the walls. On the outside, the walls were decorated with fingerprints in the shape of spirals terminating as primitive volutes. The house covers an area of 8 meters by 8 meters and has a regular square form. The roof is double pitched, made of straw and mounted on a wooden structure supported by thick poles on the outside, which stand on the front and west sides. The house interior is partitioned by a thin, irregular parapet. It separates 2 furnaces built next to it. For the first time in Macedonia, 1 small and 2 large painted amphorae have been discovered on a single side. Their shape, texture and decoration with stylized floral elements were made by the hands of a highly gifted craftsman. A total of 45 fully preserved vessels and numerous fragments have been discovered in this shrine or house. They include various pots, pithoses with barbotine ornaments, large frutaria with protruding ribs on the inside of the rim, plates, a small pyxis with plastic pitandra-like relief on the bottom, and various small vessels. The escoses, with their simple but perfect form, are especially characteristic of Tumba Matsari, decorated with feather-like barbotine with 4 handles on the belly and 1 on the back. They resemble water birds. In 2002, an earthen bathtub was discovered as well, with finely smooth walls and floor, and on it salt crystals. The terracotta figure of the Great Mother is the hallmark of the site of Tumba Mazzari and this house. Its impressive dimensions, 0.39 centimeters in height, the classic composed posture of the female figure rising above the house, watching over the house's hearth and tranquility, make this terracotta figure an exclusive artifact. Later research revealed other fragments of cylinders and a house with different dimensions and different hairstyles of the female figures. In general, the hairstyles speak of the exceptionally varied hairstyle fashion amongst the Neolithic women. Of special interest is an impressively sculpted man's head in natural dimensions on the site of Tumba Mazzari. Specimens of anthropomorphic plastic art are numerous and greatly varied. A random find from this site is a ceramic head of a ram or a bull, cranium, dated to the early Neolithic period. Other exceptional zoomorphic depictions include a goat and a centaur with receptacles in their backs. The tools discovered in Tumba Mazzari include weights for a vertical loom, biconical weights, reels for fishing nets, numerous bone spatulas standard in shape, awls, bradles and needles. Flint artifacts include small flint knives, cutters, stone mortars and millstones. The analysis of animal and bird bones from this site indicates that the Neolithic man provided his meat exclusively from his livestock and very rarely by hunting and fishing. This is the second site, the very impressive Skopje Fortress, Kale. The Skopje Fortress holds the most prominent position in the central area of the city of Skopje. It stands on the long ridge of sediment sandstone that stretches along the east bank of the river Vardar in the north-south direction, on its southern, most prominent part. The entire cultural and political history of the city is practically linked with this area. It was inhabited as a settlement as early as in prehistoric times, more specifically in the Neolithic age. Beginning with this, the earliest settlement, and through certain periods in the Bronze and Iron Age, the intensity of the settlement of this area varied until the time prior to the establishment of the Roman government in Macedonia. However, this area was settled with highest intensity as a medieval fortress, more precisely as the upper town of the medieval Skopje. As such, it was reconstructed in the periods that followed at the time of the Ottoman conquest and remains in the use to the present day. In prehistoric times there were at least 3 settlements, Neolithic, Bronze Age and Iron Age, while in the Middle Ages and the Ottoman period at least 3 other settlements were consecutively built, the first between the 10th and 13th or 14th centuries, the second between the 14th and 17th centuries, and the third between the 18th and 20th centuries. The earliest finds from the Skopje Fortress are the remains of the very first settlement from the Copper Age in Neolithic, or the 4th millennium BC. Various structures, mud huts or semi-mud huts which served as dwellings, cult structures or waste or storage pits were dug into clay subsoil. In the next period, the Bronze Age, i.e. during the 3rd and 2nd millennia BC, prehistoric way of life continued, this time in a smaller area, limited mainly to the northeast parts of the fortress, in addition to the numerous movable finds and remains of dwelling structures, ceramic ware kilns and other remains of materials culture from all the stages of the Bronze Age have also been recorded in these strata. The latest prehistoric settlement from the Iron Age, first half of the 1st millennium BC, marked the continuation of life, this time concentrated on a new site, primarily in the southeast part of the fortress. The exploration of this settlement revealed the customary remains of prehistoric architecture or houses with a rectangular floor plan and a wooden construction of poles and wickerwork. No significant traces of life in the second half of the first millennium BC have been discovered yet. However, certain finds confirm the assumption that some activities did take place on the site of the fortress during the 4th century BC. The remains of the settlements from the phase that followed belong to the medieval city. Its uninterrupted and turbulent historical development as a genuine urban centre, medieval Skopje, which continues to this day, began approximately in the late 10th century or at the time of Samuel. It was originally protected with ramparts that display high-quality masonry, which completely encircle the area, forming a unique fortification system built according to the highest standards and with the best building techniques of the period. The numerous coins from the 10th and 11th centuries, burials made by the interior side of the south rampart, war axes and arrows, ceramic ware and other small finds which date from the same period, suggest that at that time the fortress probably functioned as a large military castrum. Along the south rampart, remains have been discovered of numerous wooden structures with waste pits, hearths, kilns and traces of metallurgical activity, warehouses and workshops, i.e. blacksmith shops where weapons were made and repaired. Of special significance for the city was the south entrance to the fortress with all the accompanying elements. It continued to be used and was repaired several times in the following centuries as the main entrance, both to the later medieval and earlier Ottoman fortress. Remains of a cobbled surface, a path which ran along the interior side of the south rampart and led to the higher parts of the hill on which the fortress stands, were discovered in the section which is a continuation of the entrance segment of the fortification. All the remains of this provisionally termed Samuel phase are accompanied with finds of coins known as anonymous folies and of the Emperor Basil II, Nicephorus III and Michael VII, all dating from the 10th and 11th centuries. The cultural strata of the settlement from the 12th and 13th centuries, or from the time of the reign of Comnenus dynasty, reflect the role of Skopje as a genuine centre of the wider Balkan region. The numerous finds of lead seals, coins, remains of developed metallurgical activities and manufacture of ceramic ware, as well as a variety of finds from the daily life, testify to this. In this sense, the luxurious dish ware, decorated with painting, engraving and glazing, stands out as superbly manufactured artwork. Some of the dishes discovered are genuine works of art, while the entire collection of this ceramic ware is among the largest and most valuable in the Balkans. In the course of the 13th century, life in Skopje's upper town continued with the same intensity. The ramparts were reconstructed and surrounded an entirely new urban area, while the city was further fortified with surrounding walls and the so-called lower town, suburbium. A church with a cross-shaped interior and a necropolis around it was discovered on the highest and most dominant part of the fortress, in the southeast part of the city. According to the written records, other churches stood there as well, inside the Skopje Fortress, dated to the same period. In 1391, Skopje was captured by the Ottomans, who destroyed the city and parts of the city ramparts. After these events, the fortress was used for other purposes and served as a military barracks. The buildings and the entire cultural inventory that have been discovered and which are dated to this period reflect activities customary for a fortress that served this purpose. This is an article by Dragi Mitrevski. This is the third site which we'll have a look at, which is also located in the greater Skopje area. It's Skopje Colonia Flavia Skupinorum. Skopje is one of the largest Roman cities in the Balkans, with the status of colony. It is situated 5 kilometers northwest of Skopje, near Zikukani, on the southwest slope of Zachev Rid, left of the site where the river Lepnic flows into the Vardar. Its precise location was identified by Arthur Evans in 1883. Continuity of life on the site has been confirmed from the Bronze and Iron Ages to the 6th century BC. Beginnings of this city are linked with the incursions of the Roman legions in the late 1st century BC and the founding of the province of Moesia in 15 AD. The question concerning its previous status, i.e. whether it was a civilian settlement or a legion camp, remains open. During the Flavian dynasty, probably during the reign of Dormitan in 84 to 85, it acquired the status of a self-governing deductive colony, Colonia Flavia Skupinorium, with the settling of veterans, mainly those from Legio 7th Claudia. The original settlement was transformed into a complex Roman urban city with all the administrative, civilian and religious facilities and structures which the new conditions and circumstances required. It developed as an important administrative, economic, cultural, religious and transit centre of the province Moesia Superior. There is a reference to Skopje in Ptolemy in the 2nd century. During Marcus Aurelius in 170, the Dacian Kostoboci passed through it during their incursions towards Aegea. In 268-269 it was ravaged by the fierce hordes of Goths and Heruli. In the late 3rd century it became the metropolis of the newly established province of Dardania, and in the 4th century it experienced once again great economic and urban growth. In the Tabula Peutingeriana, 4th century, it is marked with a vignette as the province capital. During his stay in Skopje in 379 and 398, Emperor Theodosius I issued 2 imperial edicts. The city was probably not spared during the ravaging incursions of the Huns in 447. Between the 4th and 6th centuries it was an episcopal and metropolitan see. In 518 it was destroyed in a disastrous earthquake recorded in the chronicle of Marcellinus Comus. After the renewal in the 6th century, urban life eventually ceased towards the end of the century during Mauritius 582-583. It survived as a small rural settlement until the 10th and 11th centuries. Its urban features, the infrastructure and the high level of communal living, water supply, drainage system, developed street grid with paved streets, public baths, floor heating, floor mosaics, decorated walls, pane windows, place Skopje at the highest civilization scale amongst the Roman provincial cities. The surrounding walls are in the form of irregular rectangle, 738 by 590 meters, covering a surface of 43 hectares. The city plan has an orthogonal design. The streets, paved with massive stone slabs, run parallel with the rampart walls, southwest, northeast, northwest, southeast, and intersect at a right angle. The pavements are separated with curbs and are covered with porticos. Under and by the streets there is a sewage system for wastewater, as well as complex grid of clay and lead pipes for the supply of clear water. Throughout its historical development, the city preserved its basic urban plan with the same orientation of the building complexes and other structures, despite the fact that the dimensions and purpose of the city quarters changed in different periods. In terms of its urban design, judging from the scope of the exploration, these urban features are especially characteristic of the late antique period, late 3rd and 4th centuries. Several building complexes and structures have been completely or partially explored. The theatre, a grandiose structure with the unearthed contours of the Scenna, the theatre building and the auditorium, with luxurious architectural marble decoration which belongs to the Roman-type theatres built during Hadrian in the 2nd century. A Horium, a large-sized public building which served as a warehouse, built between the late 3rd and 4th centuries. A city villa, domus, a private house with walls resplendently decorated with frescoes and private floor heating, built between the 3rd and the 4th centuries. A civilian basilica, a representative and monumental public building with lavish architectural marble decoration and a mosaic floor, built in the 4th century. A city bath, a public building with floor heating and sections for hot and cold baths, built in the period between the 4th and 5th centuries. A 3-nave early Christian basilica with a baptistry on the south side, dating from the period between the 5th and 6th centuries. A small housing complex, private houses from the 6th century, several structures of unidentified purpose and part of the street grid, the Cardo Maximus, a crossroads with two decumani, another Cardo and a decumanus from the period between the 4th and 6th centuries. The necropolises and other auxiliary buildings are outside the city walls. Approximately 1,000 graves from the southeast and northwest necropolises have been explored, which date from the period between the 1st and the 4th centuries, as well as part of the antique bridge across the river Vardar, a private villa and a Christian basilica in the village of Bardolci. This is an article by Lecce Giovanova. Torresium. This is a tiny settlement, a Greco-Roman settlement, about 20 kilometers from Skopje, located in the village of Taur. As you can see, Torresium is the original name. The antique settlement of Torresium is situated in the immediate vicinity of Taur, the village approximately 20 kilometers southeast of Skopje. Today the village of Taur can be reached from two directions. The first direction is from the south, and it connects it with the city of Skopje via the bridge across the river Vardar and the village of Orishani, while the second route is 3.5 kilometers long, and the village is connected onto its southeast side with the main road E75. In Roman times, these two directions from which the settlement could be accessed represented the main road along the flow of the Vardar, Via Axia, that ran along the north side of the settlement, which stretched from Skopje through Stolbi and to Salorica. The antique settlement was first recorded by the English explorer, archaeologist and travel writer Arthur Evans more than 100 years ago. On that occasion he visited both Skopje and this settlement, identifying the latter as Torresium, the native town of Emperor Justinian, 527 to 565, to which the antique writer Prosopius also refers. Archaeological exploration of the site began in 2000 by the Skopje City Museum and has continued to this day. Today the settlement is known as Gradiste and is situated on the southeast periphery of the village of Taur, standing on a high hill that has an acropolis and two terraces, covering a total of 1.6 hectares. On the basis of archaeological exploration that has been carried out, three cultural horizons can be identified: prehistoric, late antique and early medieval. The prehistoric cultural horizon belongs to the early Bronze Age and is dated to circa 2200 to 1700 BC. Its existence has been confirmed with several finds of small stone axes, short flint knives and a number of fragments of ceramic vessels which were excavated in the antique layers. The presence of a late antique cultural horizon has been confirmed with numerous movable archaeological finds and various buildings. Two phases can be clearly identified in the stratigraphy of the horizon. The first phase lasted from the 4th century to the early 6th centuries, that is, until the disastrous earthquake of 518, and the second phase in the period after the earthquake until the end of the 6th century. The exploration of the first phase revealed remains of only one structure built of stone and mud used as binding material. In this period, the settlement had no defensive ramparts. In the second phase, after the earthquake of 518, the settlement was practically completely renewed. A defensive wall was built, as well as a water supply and drainage system. As a consequence of the several raids of Avars and Slavs in the late 6th century, life in this settlement became extinct. The early medieval cultural horizon marks only a short period of existence. After a hiatus of 2 centuries, life in this settlement was renewed in the 9th and 10th centuries. The explorations that have been carried out on this site revealed a large number of movable archaeological finds. They included numerous fragments of ceramic vessels, fragments of glassware, window panes, jewellery, earrings, fibulae, rings, bone artifacts, weapons, parts of military equipment, tools and objects from construction work, parts of locks and keys, and about 250 coins, etc. In addition to these finds, fragments of architectural stone elements such as several marble columns with bases, capitals and decorated with early Christian motifs have also been discovered as part of the first building. In our opinion, the most significant find amongst these that have been discovered thus far is the fragment of the mouth and neck of Pythos storage vessel. The mouth of the Pythos is decorated with the seal, which is in fact the monogram of Emperor Justinian. This monogram corroborates the 100 years old thesis of Sir Arthur Evans that the settlement near the village of Tawal is the antique Terrazium, the native town of Justinian I. This is an article by Kino Ristov. The castle above the river Pchinya. It's located near Skopje. Today the castle above the river Pchinya is on the present-day territory of the Republic of Macedonia, 26 kilometers southeast from the city of Skopje, by the motorway Skopje to Thessalonica. The settlement is situated on the orthographic line, which marks the point where the mountain ranges of Mount Shara and the Rhodopes meet. Hence its dramatic and disastrous geological history persists to this day. The prehistory of the castle is mystical and difficult to determine. Therefore, until recently, researchers have been unable to unravel its genesis. The waves of the river Pchinya and the conquerors who burned it down during their raids often changed its colours and the structure of its population. Around 3500 BC, the insignificant village with its nameless dwellers was forced to dig trenches and erect palisades in order to protect themselves from raiders who came from the north. The answer to the question whether the land tillers and goat breeders by the river Pchinya belonged to the Greek or were culturally close to them remains illegible on the historical pages. The few fragments of ceramic vessels that have been discovered earlier in date than 1000 BC, come from the ceramic ware from which the members of the Paeonian tribes ate, vessels which they fed those Paeonians who fought on the side of the Trojans in the wars against the Achaeans. As one of the northwest settlements which bordered with Dardania, the Paeonian settlement was undoubtedly administratively dependent on the urban centre of Bilazora, built approximately 20 kilometres from this site. Its Macedonian period, from the 4th century BC to the 1st century AD, as well as the Roman period and the period until the 4th century, are still veiled in mystery. As a Castilian, this settlement acquired its strategic importance and played an important role in the 5th, 6th and 7th centuries due to the control it had over the antique and medieval road from Thessalonica to Skopje. In the fortress, the Christian population built a church in which it prayed until the early 7th century, when it was conquered by the barbarian tribes from the north. The church site itself is impressive and awe-inspiring, as it leaves the impression that it hovers above the river Chinia. The stone mobiliary that has been discovered on this site testifies to the inventiveness, creativity and great originality of the stonemasons' feeling for the artistic expression. At the same time, the local bakers, blacksmiths and traders led their daily lives on the Tali cliffs near the Acropolis. It should be noted that only 5 kilometres north of the Castellion stands Bederina, the native village of the Byzantine Emperor Justin I, who lived between 518 and 527, ruled between 518 and 527, the uncle of the great Justinian. From a similar period, from the 7th to the 11th centuries, this settlement and the fortress fell into oblivion and was covered with the darkness of the Middle Ages. The revival of the Byzantine Empire in the 11th century restored it to life, and the Castellion gained in significance once again, a phase which persisted until the Ottoman conquest in the late 14th century. It is highly probable that once a monastery stood on this site, a fact recorded in the imperial documents kept today in the Russian monastery of St. Panteleimon on Mount Athos. According to a document which dates from the 14th century, Jacob, metropolitan of Ceres, was endowed with the monastery and the surrounding territory and property as an imperial gift, and was in charge of its administration. In all probability, he spent the last years of his life in a cell hewn in a cave under the steepest and southernmost cliffs at the foot of the castle. In the Middle Ages, the inhabitants of the Castellion were buried on the westernmost stretch of land above the river China, the site where their graves have been discovered, as well as a church in which the last rites for the deceased were performed. The Castrophilic had the best and most privileged view of the surrounding areas, who administered the region from the highest tower. The tower and the residential areas are the most impressive architectural complex, which today can hardly be overlooked or ignored by visitors. It is also very likely they included chambers for concubines. This is an article by Kurid Tchaikovsky. Skopje. The archaeological site of Skopje is situated in the central part of the Republic of Macedonia, in the area where the river Chorna Reka, the antique Eragon, flows into the river Vardar, Axios. Since it was an important antique crossroads, Skopje was marked on the tabula Ptingiriana. Therefore, in the middle of the 19th century, European explorers easily established its position. Archaeological explorations began in World War I and with certain interruptions continue to this day. Although in scholarly circles Skopje is primarily known as an antique and early Roman city, archaeological finds testify to the fact that the site was settled continually since prehistoric times. The deepest layers have yielded fragments of ceramic vessels with typological and stylistic characteristics of the late Bronze and early Iron Ages, 13th to the 19th centuries BC. Specimens of ceramics and bronze jewellery from the Advanced Iron Age, 8th to the 6th century BC, have been discovered on a number of locations, while certain grave offerings date from the Classic Antique period and the centuries that followed. The earliest reference to Skopje in written records can be found in Titus Livius, the Roman historian who records the military victory of the Macedonian king Philip V over the Dardanian invaders near Skopje in 197 BC. According to Livius, Skopje was an ancient city, a claim that has been confirmed by modern archaeology. Immediately after the conquest of Macedonia by the Romans in 168 BC, Skopje became the centre of salt trade for the cattle breeders of the northern regions. At that time the city was still situated only on the highest point of the site, covering a small surface of 3.5 to 4 hectares. At the time of Octavian Augustus it rapidly spread, covering a surface of 20 hectares. Now a fortified city, it acquired the status of an oppidum civium Romanum, while as early as in 69 it already had administrative rank of a municipium, a fact confirmed by the copper coins minted in the city itself, which minted coins as late as in the 3rd century. During the early Roman Empire and its middle period, Skopje experienced rapid economic growth. It was in this period that the most exquisite buildings were erected. The city gate with a triumphal arch, a resplendent house known as Casa Romana with coloured stucco decoration and frescoes, the monumental theatre built of white marble with red veins, the mysterious arched building, also known as the Forum, in which numerous niches stood gilded marble statues of deities, perhaps a pantheon, architectural and cult architectural marble decorations on temples and other buildings. The Jewish community in Skopje also built their synagogue. The overall prosperity and well-being were violently interrupted with the onslaughts and plundering of the Heruls, Heruli and Goths in 267 to 269. The city slowly recovered, while its urban features changed in late antiquity, according to the urban characteristics of the East Mediterranean style, with the irregular grid of city quarters and large houses with interior peristyle courts decorated with resplendent fountains and mosaic floors. The houses of the collector Partinius, the Jewish rabbi Polycharmosius, and of Prehistoric, the buildings known as the Casino, the Episcopal Residence and the North Palace, together with the public bath at the centre of the city. The street Via Sacra and the renewed fortification characterised this period. Skopje became an influential city in the early Christian period as an episcopal centre which played an important role in the establishment of the new state religion. Bishop Budius was present at the First Council of Nicaea in 325, while other church registers and inscriptions discovered in the city reveal the names of 6 other bishops from Skopje. 4 early Christian churches have been discovered in the city and 3 other churches outside the city walls. The majority of them have baptistries, among them the largest and the most resplendent in the Basilica of Bishop Philip from the first half of the 5th century, built above an earlier church, through 2 chronological phases. It is well known that during his stay in Skopje, Emperor Theodosius I issued 2 edicts that strictly regulated religious issues. However, the teachings of the learned philosopher Johannes Stobius, who had still preached the old spiritual tradition, have also been recorded. During the 5th and 6th centuries, Skopje was exposed to destruction several times. In 447 it was conquered and burned down by the Huns. In 479 it was looted by the hordes of Theodoric the Great, king of the East Goths, and it was struck by an earthquake in the early 6th century. It continued to exist, but without its former urban features. A number of hidden hoards with coins dating from the 8th and 9th decades of the 6th century represent the last specimens of material evidence for the life of Skopje, whose fall into oblivion and cessation of life coincide with the incursions of the Kutrygas, Avars and Slavs in the Balkan region. This is an article by Zoran Georgiev. Vrbianska Chuka. The site of Vrbianska Chuka near the village of Skopje was discovered in 1977. It's famous for its monumental sacrificial altar discovered in a village house. The settlement, a fairly large artificial mound rising 2.8 meters above the surrounding terrain, is situated approximately 2 kilometers south of the modern road Prilep-Krushevo. Archaeological research was carried out between 1979 and 1989. It revealed a Neolithic settlement of the mound type. A number of dwellings, places, and parts of houses were discovered, damaged by a large number of medieval pits. Characteristic of the Neolithic period are lavishly manufactured vessels, red-baked, crudely made vessels, and a variety of cult objects, sacrificial altars. Of special interest is the vessel in the form of a tortoise. The tortoise was a totem, venerated because it carries its house and always lived in it. This resulted with the emergence of the cult of the Great Mother, the basic cult of the Neolithic in Macedonia, with characteristic sacrificial altars. In house number 1 in this Neolithic settlement, an object was discovered which, according to scholarly opinion, a sacrificial altar of cult character. To scholarly opinion, a sacrificial altar of cult character. That is why it was believed that the house was a shrine intended for the needs of the population of the settlement, and the object represents part of a complex system of libation receptacles. Its construction is complex and consists of live quadrangular structures. The large quadrangular structures, 2.2 meters in size, is built of massive earthen walls, open on the front side, while the corners are finely profiled with prominent pilasters. On one of the lateral sides, a small plastic detail is connected with 4 lateral shallow receptacles arranged in a row, as in the small sacrificial altars of the table type, which resembles the capital M, letter M. The detail can be seen on the lateral side of the figure of the Great Mother on a throne with leopards from Katahoyuk, the ceramic sacrificial altar from Stenche, Gostivar, and other specimens. The 4 lateral receptacles stand on a joint base, with their bottoms on only slightly different levels. Their total length is 2 meters, and in some of them there are traces of burning. Numerous shallow water vessels and shells have been discovered near these structures. Recent scholarly research based on new archaeological evidence and analogies maintains that the structure had a utilitarian purpose. It is highly probable that the 4 lateral recipients served as basins used for the desalination of water, in which cooking salt was crystallized. Similar structures from the site of Tumba Madzari and Stenche were used for the same purpose. The analysis of the crust from the basin of the site of Tumba Madzari indicates that it is composed of salts. Salt is irreplaceable in the life of people and domestic animals, and perhaps the owner of the structure in Skopje Fortress produced domestic salt. With certain interruptions, the site was also settled in the Roman and medieval periods. Numerous fragments of ceramic vessels and roof tiles, tegulae, metal objects and coins unearthed during the excavations testify to this fact. It was inhabited from the middle of the 3rd to the 7th centuries. The 6 graves without finds that have been discovered on this site date from the medieval period. More than 60 circular pits have been discovered, which, judging from the archaeological finds discovered in them, probably served for the storage of food. They are also dated to the medieval period. The results from the exploration of the Neolithic settlement of Skopje Fortress that have been carried out thus far included among the most important archaeological sites in Pelagonia from the Neolithic period, that is from the 6th millennium BC. The archaeological finds from the site are exhibited in the National Museum of Prehistoric. Stubera. The remains of the city of Stubera lie 16 kilometers west of Prilep, at the mouth of the river Blato, where it flows into the river Chorna Rika, previously known as the Eragon. The earliest reference to this city comes from Polybius, and more detailed information is found in Livy and Strabo, who says that Stubera stands at the river Eragon and belongs to the Derones. The ancient itinerary refer to the fact that Stubera is situated by the road Stobi to Heraclea. In the Tabula Pointigeria, Stubera is not mentioned. However, in the Ravenna geographer it is mentioned as Istubera. Amongst the cities mentioned in the following order: Eristion, Keramia, Istubera and Heraclea. The first archaeological research was carried out by N. Vulich in 1924. More detailed data on the existence of a large antique settlement was obtained with the archaeological research carried out in 1953 by the Archaeological Museum of Macedonia. Since the 1980s, the Institute and Museum in Prilep have been carrying out archaeological explorations of the open sites and conservation of the remains of the discovered structures. Archaeological research of the hill known as Bedem revealed parts of Hellenistic rampart, the temple of the goddess Tuchi, and part of the complex of Gymnasium. The Hellenistic city rampart, 3 meters thick, whose remains have been discovered in the north and west parts of the hill, is made of broken local stone, built with the technique of dry stone building. The temple of the goddess Tuchi, the patroness of the city, stands on the west side of the hill on one of the terraces, which steeply descend from east to west. It is solid in structure with massive walls made of broken stone, bricks and lime mortar, 10 by 10 meters in size. The temple has a semicircular niche in the east wall and lateral niches in the south and north walls that bear inscriptions which refer to the donors. Portrait busts of Orestes and Philoxenes, father and son, the prominent citizens of Stubera, and the cult sculpture of the infant Bacchus have been discovered in the temple. The inscription in the central niche refers to the renewal of the temple in the 2nd century, i.e. in 126 AD, with a donation made by Anthestia Fusha. On the lowest terrace, which gradually unfolds to the flat part of Bedem Hill and towards the river Blato, part of the remnants of the gymnasium, a public building, have been excavated. The structures that have been explored are the peristyle with the atrium a semicircular exedra at Heroon and Temenos, which cover the surface of circa 1,000 square meters. These structures are made of broken stone and brick with lime mortar used as binding material and are covered with tegulae and embrasures in the Heroon and Temenos, which on the east side stand on the remnants of the Hellenistic rampart. The largest number of marble monuments and cult and portrait architectural stone elements has been decorated with
Ride till I can't no more.
I got the horses in the back, horse stock is attached.